might have the skills to get you to that position or point in life, but
Hmm.
you can't just become complacent. You can't just say I've arrived, I'm the boss now, or I make this much salary, or I have this position in the company, I've made it, let me just take it easy, let me take a
Hmm.
break. That's not how it works. And then if you're in I tell people all the time, if you're in any position in leadership, your job is to help manage people, and every single person under you or under your leadership is looking at you to see, how do I get to where that person is.
Well, welcome to Navigation and Discovery with Cameron Singh. On today's episode, we have Dr. Torian Salary, and we are going to be talking to him about personal growth and the importance of enhancing communication. Dr. Torian Salary is a pastor, speaker, coach, author, and you are going to learn so much about him in terms of his journey in communication and his journey of personal growth, and why these two things are so important in our journey of life. So I really hope that you enjoy this podcast episode with Dr. Torian Salary. Well, Torian, welcome to the podcast. Happy to have you on.
Hey, thank you so much, man. I'm glad to be here to chat a little bit and talk about what I love to do.
Yeah, it's been great knowing you, and since connecting, love all the work that you're doing. So I'm really excited, and some of the topics we're going to take a deep dive on. So, because you do a lot of really great work with personal growth and communication, and want to touch on both because I think both areas are so important with the work that you do.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yep, agreed.
So I forgot, I think on your website it shows you're like the professor of personal growth or something like that. Which is intriguing because, personal growth is something that many do not pursue today. So I want to hear a little bit about kind of your story and why personal growth is so important for you, and why you make that sort of like a trademark of what you do.
Yeah, so I appreciate the question. Personal growth is extremely important to me because I've always been told, if you're not growing, you're not learning, you're just being stagnant. And so, man, the world is constantly changing. There's always new stuff happening, new technology, new methods of doing things. And so I think it's incumbent upon ourselves to figure out how to grow. In fact, I'll tell you this, one of my favorite quotes from a speaker, I can't even quite call his name, but I can call a quote. And he said, you have to unlearn, relearn, and you have to learn, unlearn, and relearn. There it is. You have
Mm,
to learn something, you have to unlearn it, and you got to relearn the new way of doing it. And that's really all what personal growth is. You're constantly growing, and the way you grow is you got to kind of get rid of some of that knowledge you just learned perhaps yesterday, because the world is moving so fast, and you got to relearn a new way of doing it.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's personal growth for me has been really instrumental to bring me where I am today. If it wasn't for personal growth and me pursuing that and trying to take things to the next level and learn something new, it's
Yeah.
really hard to stay, I don't know, like cutting edge. It's really difficult to stay on top of, of what you're doing too, especially with the businesses that we have and the work that we do. And, you're a pastor too, so you really have to do a lot of work towards that.
You do. Yeah, you do. You're right. Even my children, and I have 4 children, and there's always new apps, new games, new ways
Mhm.
of doing things. And even me, I feel like I'm pretty in tune with technology and how the world works. But every day it seems like they show me something new on their phone, or a new way of doing something that I've been doing forever. And I feel like I've got the most efficient, effective way. And they'll come and say, no, Dad, this is how we're doing it these days. And so you've got to keep up with the way the world is. And that's growing in a personal and even a professional, in a professional way as well.
Hmm. So what has brought you to the work that you are doing today and pursuing with kind of the work that you do in both personal growth as a executive communications coach? What led you to kind of that journey into pursuing that?
Well, you know what? I tell everyone, I even wrote it in the book that I have. I tell everyone the story that it was my mother that started me off in this journey when I was 15 years old. So we're talking 25, almost 26 years ago. And I was growing up, typical Southern family. We were in the church, and I had to go there at 15, 14, 15 years old because my mother made me go.
Hmm.
Really had no interest in being in church and being a speaker, being a minister, just was going to church because my mom made me go to church. And my mom challenged me one day and said, Torian, she said, you need to do more. I was the person that fell asleep on her shoulder every Sunday, asked to play games on her phone, the snake game, if you remember that. And that was my Sunday morning, every Sunday morning in church. She said, no, you need to do more. You need to be more involved and more active. And so, kind of ironically, to kind of, for lack of better words, to kind of shut her up and get her off my back, I said, you know what? I'm just going to go to the extreme just to kind of satisfy her. And I volunteered to do what they call a sermonette, a little 10-15 minute talk for the youth. And I was nervous, I was terrified. Somehow I got through it, and I knew in that moment this is something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So even at the age of 15, I knew I wanted to do something involving speaking or communication. And so I started to pursue that, went, job after job, got a couple of degrees from that. And then I started to notice that executives are executives, but not all of them, let me just preface, not all of them. But there are many people who have executive titles and responsibilities and salaries, and they couldn't hold a conversation. They couldn't really communicate.
Hmm.
So I said, if my love and my passion for communication, coupled with their perhaps lack or need of growing in that area, I said I want to make a career out of this. And so ever since then, I've been head over heels about helping individuals, especially executives, but helping individuals learn how to communicate with impact, with influence, and with confidence.
Yeah, and how has your journey been with that, with communication? Because I'm sure it's evolved over time and you had some challenges here and there. Like how has your journey evolved over the years?
So again, back to your original question, it's personal growth, it's
Hmm.
development. It never stops. I've never had the mindset of I've arrived, I've made it, I can stop reading books, I can stop learning the ins and outs. And so even in the realm of trying to help others, I'm helping myself. And I'm
Yeah.
reading books. And I worked at a company here in the Atlanta area where we taught workshops and we teach seminars on communication. And so I was immersing myself into that world and constantly feeding myself. How do I do this better? What's the better way to do this? What's the most effective way to do this? How do I dominate a stage by doing this? And so I
Hmm.
started picking up things and tips and tricks and techniques myself that I can then say, I want to use that to help other people.
Yeah, yeah. With executives and senior leaders, I see that same thing is like communication is something, an area that is just not there for many. And I don't know what it is, but what is it, what is sort of the things that you're finding with the people that you work with communication? What's really what are some of the things that you're seeing with these individuals that you work with?
So, bottom line, the number one thing I see all the time is connection.
Hmm.
And you'd be surprised. These are executive folks. These are CEO, C-suite level individuals making the big bucks. Got the corner office overlooking downtown, whatever. Got the nice 2024 car. I mean, these are the big bosses, but they cannot connect to their audience. Now they may be able to hold a conversation. They can maybe use a couple of big words and speak eloquently, but
Yeah.
that connecting point with the audience is not there. And so many people, and I hate to say it this way, but many people will listen and give their time and attention to an executive when they're talking simply because of their title. It's
Yeah.
not because I feel a connection. It's not because I'm engaged in what you're saying or you're engaging me. It's I need to listen because he or she is up here and I'm down here. And so I have made it my mission to how do we close that gap? Yes, you can, demand respect because you're up here. Yes, you've got the title. Yes, you've got the responsibility. But if you don't have the audience, you have nothing. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care how nice you can put together some words. If you cannot connect to your audience, you have lost the game entirely. So to answer your question, I think the number one thing people fail at is I've got these great words. I've got this awesome audience. How do I draw a connection between the two?
Hmm. And I think a big area of just plain leadership is communication. If you can't
Yeah,
communicate with your people, if you can't connect with your people,
that's true.
you're already missing the mark in leadership. Like leadership, I just saw a clip on Instagram this morning by John Maxwell. It's
Yeah.
like leadership is all about valuing people. It's all about people and connection. And if you miss that, you could be good at everything else at your job, but if you can't connect with like your leaders that you oversee, your people, if you can't like have that connection, that's a big miss in leadership, and especially at such a high level as that.
Yeah, it is. As the quote says, people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses or they quit managers. People
Mhm.
love what they do, but because I don't feel there's a connection between my boss and I, or your leadership or communication management style doesn't work with what I need, I'm willing to walk away from the company, not because I don't like the work, because I'm gonna go down the street and get a job doing the exact same work for a better boss. People quit their leaders, not their boss, or excuse me, not their job. And so
Mhm.
that's why, as you mentioned, it's so important to value people, to connect with people through leadership and communication to where people feel like I'm never going to leave this person. We
Mhm.
feel there's a connection, I'm engaged, there's a relationship here. And that's what makes it impossible for people not to pay attention when you open your mouth.
Yeah, and I like to go back to personal growth because I think this is another element with senior leaders because I think what happens, and I'm seeing this a lot in my context in the aviation industry, where leaders get promoted, senior leaders get promoted, and they don't do anything to grow themselves. They just get that seat and they settle. So then they're if they're not pursuing growth for themselves, doing whatever work they need to, whether it's communication or maybe whatever that might be to be a better leader, they stay the same and they stay kind of that mediocrity leader, and it really shows on their performance and the way they are in a day to day. It shows. You can tell a leader that is pursuing personal growth compared to one that is not very easily.
Yeah, I can't remember the author of the book, but there's a book that says what got you here won't get you there. And
Oh yeah. And yeah, I don't know who that author is, but yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But that's the concept. You might have the skills to get you to that position or point in life, but
Hmm.
you can't just become complacent. You can't just say I've arrived. I'm the boss now, or I make this much salary, or I have this position in the company. I've made it. Let me just take it easy. Let me take a
Hmm.
break. That's not how it works. And then if you're in, I tell people all the time, if you're in any position in leadership, your job is to help manage people, and every single person under you or under your leadership is looking at you to see how do I get to where that person is.
Hmm.
So if they see you in that position, taking it easy, chilling, relaxing, I don't have to work hard anymore, I've made it, then what message are you sending to the tens, hundreds, thousands of people that are saying, I don't really have to work that hard. I can just take it easy. I can just come to work and do the bare minimum. Or as you mentioned, I can just kind of be mediocre and I'm good. So if I'm following a leader that's constantly chasing after more, and in my mind, I'm thinking, man, you made it.
Hmm.
I want to get to where you are. You got that office, you got that whatever. You've made it, and here you are still trying to get more. That's motivating within itself. And so, yeah, you're right. It's unfortunate that many people get to that point and say, "I can stop now."
Yeah. At what point is it that leaders end up reaching out to you and wanting help? Because that's a big step too, to also reach out for help. At what point are they?
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. I think it's a big humiliating, or you got to be humble because again,
Hmm.
leaders are at a certain level in life, and then they say, well, you know what, maybe it's when they hit that snag, maybe when they get feedback from their colleagues, their peers, their audience, maybe it's an intrinsic thing within themselves when they say, hey, I can get on stage and do a phenomenal speech or presentation, but I just feel like the audience isn't really getting or grasping or connecting like I would like them to. And so maybe once they hit that point where they feel like there's something missing, again,
Hmm.
between what I'm able to do and what I want the people to do, there's something missing. And that's where I come in and say, look, let's figure out what that missing ingredient is. You can attempt to make the best cake in the world, but if you're missing one ingredient, it
Yeah.
doesn't the same. People can tell. It might it'll satisfy, my appetite for a while. But I'm gonna take that bite and say, you know what, it's good, but there's something missing. And a lot of times they say, I can't quite figure out what it is, but there's something missing in this cake. And that's where I try to come in and say, let's find the missing ingredient so that you can go from good to great.
Mm. Yeah, I think getting coaching, especially when you're at that senior level or executive level, it's so important to have because there's always something that you need to grow in, develop in, and I think it's truly going to, maybe it's already becoming a part of personal growth at that level. I think it's very important to be wanting to get better and better and take things to the next level for you as a leader,
Mhm.
because you're gonna see that impact in your organization, your team, your department, or whoever you're overseeing. It's gonna translate very easily.
It is. And it might be small, little steps here. It might be incremental, but over time, you're right. If you invest in yourself, whether it's just reading an extra book per month or investing in executive communication coaching, going to listen to a seminar, even just something simple like let me pull up a few YouTube videos, just those small little investments you're taking in yourself, as you mentioned, will show up not just within your performance,
Hmm.
just within the people that report to you's performance, but in the entire organization's performance. And you can, it might be 5, 10, 20 years. You can finally trace it back and say, I really think it was when I was taking those extra classes or when I invested in myself by attending this seminar, this workshop. That was the building block for where not only I am, but for where this organization is today.
Hmm. What
Yeah.
advice would you have for those that, because I think being just a new leader in general, or even a new executive senior leader,
Yeah.
comes with a lot of weight, and there's a lot of that inner voice that you might have self-doubt, lack of confidence, and it might show when you start a new role, like to your people, like, oh wow, this guy's like, or this person is like might not be it, right? This person might have all the credentials and everything, the experience, but when this person shows up day one, it's like can't even carry a conversation, like you said. Um, what are some of the areas that those folks should focus on when stepping into something new, a new leadership role, new senior leadership role, whatever that might look like? How do they
Mhm.
build that confidence, and what are some areas they should focus on?
Yeah, great question. I've got two quick answers. Number one, I tell people every single day when I'm coaching clients, I tell them, as nerve-wracking as it might be, stepping into this leadership role or being tapped to do a speech in front of 10,000 people, whatever that is for you, I tell them all the time, the number one thing you've got to realize is people want you to succeed. And by people, I mean your audience. Your audience wants you to do a good job. And I give
Mm,
them a funny example and say, when was the last time you've ever gone to the movies hoping that it's a terrible movie? Nobody does that. You're giving up your time, you're giving up your money. You walk into the theater thinking, I hope this is a good movie. I
yeah.
hope it's funny. I hope it's scary. Whatever you're hoping it for. So you're wanting it to be a good experience for you. No one says I've got to go hear this hour-long presentation. I hope he sucks. Nobody says that
Mhm.
because that's going to affect my experience. So I tell
Yeah.
people all the time, secretly, people are rooting for you to do well. Number one, that's the number one confidence builder. I know it's nerve-wracking stepping on stage. I know it can be frightening. Go in there with the confidence of, man, these people are rooting for me. They want me to do well. They want me to succeed. That's the number one thing. Number two thing is, which I happened to write my dissertation for my doctorate degree. It was all about, ironically enough, leadership. And I examined a couple of different leadership styles or types based on how people are influenced or adapt or how they adapt to it. And so the two styles that I focused on was transformational and transactional,
Mm,
and how those two leadership types affect the motivation of their employees. And what I discovered just very quickly is 100% all day. Transformational is one of the greatest leadership types because you are helping to transform people. Going back to that conversation of people matter, people are very valuable. So you're transforming people versus the other one was transactional. And many people step into that leadership role thinking it's transaction. In other words, get the job done, get the job
Yeah.
done. Next transaction, get the job done. And you're so focused on getting the transaction that you have not transformed people, or you're so focused on getting that next dollar in the business sale that, man, you're burning bridges along the way with your people. And so I tell people all the time, new leadership, new management, whatever it is for you, go for transforming people. When you transform people, again, those people will work with you, fight for you, go to the ends of the earth for you. And that will then, of course, translate to dollars, which we get. We know that's what
Yeah.
business is about. But if you're just going after the dollar and not the people, you're only going to make a few of these before people say, I'm jumping ship. So, number one, understand people are rooting for you. Number two, focus on your people, because your people are the ones that help make you those dollar bills.
Mhm. And I think too, another element is not going into the role like you know it all, because I think that that could be that is actually a mistake that I made earlier in my first leadership role. I was like, oh, I gotta make sure I know it all, and when I actually didn't. And you gotta lean on your team. Like, hey, I don't know this, or I don't know the history on this. Can you help me? And that really makes a difference. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
It does. That's a great point. Again, I got promoted. I got this
Yeah.
nice office. I got this position. We walk in sometimes thinking, I know what I'm doing. That's what got me to this point. But again,
Mhm.
what got you here won't get you
We'll get
there.
you there.
And,
Yep.
and so if you walk in with that, I hate to use the word, but that cocky attitude of, I know everything, I'm good, I'm an island, I can figure it out, you're
Hmm.
going to crash very quickly. So one of the number one things that I see leaders struggle with, again, back to what we said earlier, is being humble enough to say, I don't know it all. I'm
Yeah.
the minister of a church. Our church here, I'm in Atlanta area. Our church has close to about 400 people that I get to speak to every single Sunday. And I tell my congregation of 400 people, hey, look, even though I'm in this position to teach you about, this or teach you about that, I don't know everything. I don't profess to know every single thing in the Bible, for example.
Mhm.
But I'm going to give you everything I know in a very confident way. And if there's a question you have, or if there's a question I have, I'm going to lean on the next person that might have that knowledge. I will never approach a situation thinking that I know more than everybody in the world on that subject. There's
Yeah.
always more to learn, personal growth. There's always more to acquire. There's always somebody that knows more than you. So walk in there with a very humble mentality of saying, "Hey, I'm a hard worker. I know a little bit about a little bit to get me to this point, but man, I've got a whole lot of other people that I can lean on that can get me to that next level. You can't do it by
Mhm.
yourself."
Yeah, this might go in a tangent, but I think I really want to hone in on that term, what got you here won't get you there, because
Yeah, absolutely.
this is one of the things I think, especially like those that are on that leadership pipeline for growth, may not really understand well. Like for example, from aviation context, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Like an operations manager role overseeing an operation, like what got you there won't get you to the general manager role of that operation. And I think there's that mindset that I see in a lot of aspiring leaders when they're not able to achieve that senior leadership role. It's because they're really hung up in the skills what got them to that operations manager role. And one of the things, right, they don't develop themselves, so they're not growing themselves to have that general manager or senior leader mindset. And so when it comes to maybe a promotional opportunity, they're often passed on because they themselves have not developed, and they're in those roles for longer periods of time, and they get so frustrated and they're like, what am I not doing properly? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, you're right. And I think a lot of companies do a great job of presenting a lot of it, is worked in their budget, the bigger
Mhm.
organization for personal growth and development, professional growth and development. A lot of them have different resources for their employees to take advantage of to continue to grow. But a lot of it is also, or a lot of it can be found externally. So
Yeah.
companies have a lot of internal things. Hey, we've got these many courses you can take online in the
Mhm.
learning lab to increase, but there's also some external stuff coming. A lot of the times, I'm one of the external guys. You reach out because it may be something your company doesn't offer in internally is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And so wherever you've got to go get it, internally or externally, you've got to continue to find ways and resources and tools to continue to help you to grow personally. That is and I've been there before. That is a very sad story, to feel that I've worked so hard to get again here,
Mhm.
and my goal is to get there, and I'm relying on what got me to point A, expecting it to carry me to point Z. And there's a whole lot of other letters in between that I've got to, check the box on. And
Yeah.
again, I get complacent, I get comfortable thinking I made it. I don't really have to work hard. It'll come, the promotions will
Mhm.
come. Well, you're going to continue to get passed over because other people are taking advantage of resources,
Mhm.
learning, personal growth things. So I think it's super important to always have the mindset to keep growing, keep developing. I tell myself all the time, there's always more to learn.
Mhm.
That's it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think this was a great start to a good conversation, and I hope it really really helps those that are listening to really pursue for more. I think those that are tuning into this podcast are already pursuing more, but to encourage others to do the same, because I think that's what's important is not just to do personal growth for ourselves, but how can you enable others to pursue the same? Because I think so many people nowadays are just settling for mediocrity. I don't know why, but like many people just settle for mediocrity and just want to just ride the wave and cruise, go on cruise control
Yeah, doing enough just to get by.
just to get by.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it again goes back to that confidence. A lot of people don't want to be in the quote unquote spotlight, so they'll tell me I don't want to do too much at work because I don't want to be seen by this. I don't want to get extra responsibility, but I'm going to do enough to keep my job. So I'm
Yeah.
content, like you said, riding the wave. I'm one of the middle guys,
Hmm.
and hey, it may work for some people, but for others, like you said, in particular, your listeners that are tuning in to these talks and podcasts, they're on the road of saying, I want to get more. Let me tune
Hmm.
into this show. Let me hear this person, because they're trying to get what they need to get so they can get where they want to go. Other people are just okay with saying, I'm cool hanging out in the middle.
Yeah, you touched on something good there that I want to chat on is the
Yeah.
being on the spotlight because I think the reason why people are hesitant, and I was hesitant at first, is to for growth, right? Is to get that spotlight,
Yeah.
or they're afraid of that spotlight, but not realizing that having that spotlight is going to help them get to the next level. I mean, you don't want to aspire for the spotlight, right? That's really having bad intentions, but to you, whatever you do to add value to your organization or help yourself grow or maybe add revenue, whatever that might look like. I think many are afraid of the spotlight, and that's a huge inhibitor in just growth of the person. Like, what would you say for those that are fearful of that spotlight?
Yeah, great example. I would say continue to work hard. If your goal is to get to the next level, whatever the next level is for you, continue to work hard. And if you don't want to be the spotlight person,
Yeah,
you keep working hard and your path will be carved. Here's a perfect example. Not everybody wants to be the actor, right? That's the fame, the celebrity. You're always in front of the camera. You're seen on TV, billboards, magazines. Not everybody really wants that type of spotlight. However, when you go back to the movie example, when you go watch a great movie, all you see are the main two or three characters. What you don't see are the thousands of people behind the scenes that were holding the lights,
yeah.
holding the microphone, making sure the set was right, making sure the location was scouted just right for this movie. And so there's a whole lot of people behind the scenes that without their work, those actors wouldn't have what they're able to have. So I tell people, if you're not the actor, that's fine. You work hard behind the scenes and you're still in the proverbial spotlight, just not on camera. Because again, your role behind the stage is if not more equally important than the actor that's on the stage. The actor that's on the stage couldn't do anything without the team behind him or her making it happen. So whether you're in front of the stage or behind the curtain, you keep working hard and you'll get to where you want to go. But it also, as you mentioned, is going to take a whole lot of extra personal and professional development.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Torian. And for those listening or watching, you can stay after, and I'll provide some details on how you can connect with Torian and connect with the work that he's doing and all the social media links as well. Torian, this was a great conversation. I think we just scratched the surface of this. Thank you so much for being on the podcast and for the work that you do, because I think it's so critical, the work that you're doing, especially to help leaders and executives.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. Had a great time, and yeah, you're right. We'll have to catch up for part 2 one day soon.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in to Navigation and Discovery with Cameron Singh. If you want to connect with Dr. Torian Salary, all his information is provided in the podcast description on whichever platform you're listening on. Also, you can go ahead and get a hold of his book as well. And really hope that you enjoyed this podcast episode. So feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And we'll catch you again on this podcast next Tuesday for another brand new episode. Thank you.